All right, welcome everyone to the regular board meeting of the St. Peter School Board. It is Monday, April 19th, 2021, in the governor's room of the St. Peter Community Center. And you notice that most of us are not wearing masks. That is because the state mandate for places like the St. Peter Community Center has expired. The mask mandate still is in place for school buildings, and there are some people in attendance who are wearing masks, and certainly encourage anyone who wants to continue to wear a mask to wear a mask. But we have taken our masks off as there's not a mandate for this building. So with that, if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Consider and adopt the agenda. Is there anyone who would make a motion? Or
so moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Consideration of requests to speak on the agenda. I don't believe we received any, and there is no one in attendance who wishes to speak at this time. Move on to the approval of consent agenda items. Is there any member who wishes to make a motion or to pull out any individual consent agenda item for further discussion?
I was just going to say, I was in last week and checked the bills, and they're all in order.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Treasurer Carlson.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving right along to the student spotlight. I believe we have 3 students from the high school and would like Principal Engeldinger to give them an introduction.
Oh, you guys, sorry for that glitch. I just logged myself out because I'm actually attending this meeting for the first time on my iPad, and I hung up instead of unmuted myself. So bear with me if you lose me again. I am excited to introduce you to 3 of our academic all-stars from St. Peter High School. Rahima Jamak from mock trial, Miranda Seaham mock trial, and David Marlowe, who was our single state speech attendee. I thought of these kids immediately when it was the high school's turn to host the student spotlight, because the kids in our academic competitions have been working away and doing their thing all year without an audience, without being able to attend in-person events, who are athletes. And so these 3 especially deserve some attention tonight. Rahima and Miranda were I believe they were our all-state winners in the mock trial team. Rahima for being, I believe, the all-state attorney, and Miranda for being an all-state witness. And then David, like I said, was our lone state speech attendee. It was different this year because they were competing from the school building, which was kind of exciting for the rest of us, but I know it wasn't quite the same for them. So with that, I'm going to let the kids take it away, and they're each going to talk a little bit about what that was like this year and about their activities. So thank you for being here, kids. If we want to start maybe with David and then move on to our mock trial kids.
Sure. All right. Sorry if there's loud noises in the background here. I'm in a room in my house. So, all right. So I'm David Marlowe, right? I'm, as Mrs. Engeldinger said, I went to sit and speech, which was supposed to be at Wyzetta, but unfortunately it wasn't. So obviously it was online. Before I share that, I would like to say that my category, 13 categories where you write your own story with your own concepts, and you apply a moral to it, and along with that, you create your own characters. And after you're done writing your script, you're writing your story, you implement like postures and voices later. So I know this is going to sound silly, but this year I had a voice that sounded like this. So this year I had a voice that sounded like this. And I know that's completely insane, but to get to state, you had to implement a lot of those movements and voices. So yeah, I did get. I did pretty well in my first couple meets up to subsections and sections, but subsections, I got second, third at sections, and top 3 at sections go on to state. So I was able to go on to state. And at state, I as of scoring, I got a 4.24, which means I got a top 11 in creative expression out of 24 competitors in the category. So top half creative expression. That's the way I like to put it. So I knew that going into this last speech season, I obviously wasn't aware of like how our online tournament format was going to bring. In a way, coming up with a concept for my speech and writing and performing it didn't feel as nerve-wracking as it felt last year. That could have been because of what I thought was my creativity kind of going down the drain in a way during lockdown, and how I wasn't able to think of voices, think of characters. But I'm glad I figured it out. I'm glad I figured it out towards the end of the season, because honestly, I think it was a big season for figuring out confidence in front of crowds. Because before my first meet, my stomach was already doing cartwheels. I was trying my best to download the app Jitsi, which is like Zoom. I was downloading it to my mom's iPad because my school iPad wasn't the best for it, and thankfully it didn't have too many malfunctions. I knew at some meets, like, there would be competitors that would have malfunctions like all the time. I remember one girl, she got last in a round because she couldn't log on to her iPad without it dying. And I remember at state there was one person I was competing against that their audio didn't work for some reason, and they almost didn't perform that round because of that. So something along the lines of working with an iPad would be something I'd have to figure out a strategy for. The one thing that I did not know going into the season is that obviously I get to see people's reactions when they watch my speech, because I think maybe there'll be 5 other people in a round, as well as maybe one judge, so maybe 6 people in a preliminary round. That's 6 people that might or might not have their cameras off. So if everyone has their cameras off, I won't have reactions, and everyone's mics are off as well, so it doesn't disrupt anything that I might be saying. Like, I can't hear laughs, I can't see laughs at all unless I look at the corner of my eye. I remember performing in front of my family for the first time, and I remember just cracking up at all of my jokes that they were cracking up at, because I completely forgot how to move on with my speech as someone who was snapping to it. But I'm so glad that I just figured it out with my amazing coaches. I don't know if you were an English teacher at the middle school, but she was so supportive this year, and she said it herself that she was just figuring everything out along with us, and it was just awesome that we had that. And there weren't many competitors this year, so we were kind of left in the dark with people to compete with and to have supporting one another, if that makes sense. And it's just felt great to stay. I knew in a way I wasn't going to win with honors or something like that, but I knew that getting to state with my speech was just a privilege on its own. And honestly, I think this is one of the best speech seasons ever, even if it was online.
Thank you, David. Thank you for being here tonight and representing the high school. Now, Rahima and Miranda from our mock trial team.
Hi, I'm Miranda Seaham, and I was a witness this year. And then Rahima, if you want to introduce yourself.
My name is Rahima Shamar, and I was an attorney this year.
So, I guess I'll describe what mock trial is. So every year we get like a case or a brief, and it can either be a criminal or a civil trial. In this case, it was a civil trial or case, and we basically have 6 witnesses, and they like embody the character of that person or witness. And then we also have the 3 attorneys that question the witnesses. And then I don't know if you have anything to add, Rahima.
Yeah, so I'll just give you like a brief rundown about our case this year because it was a little bit more interesting because it actually related to our COVID-19 situation. So basically in this case, there was the Nixon Lodge, which is a wedding venue, and they planned to make this wedding for this Knox couple. But then COVID hit and they were unable to satisfy the terms of the contract that they had signed with them. So then there was like this whole lawsuit going on. Well, and the Nixon Lodge was saying, well, you guys should pay us the rest of the money because the contract says, you have to pay like this $18,000. And the couple was like, well, we didn't get our wedding, so you should actually cancel all that. And it was just a lot going on in terms of like the logistics of the contract, and there was a lot of like contract law that related to that. And it was really interesting to go into because it was a bit more dense than the stuff we had done previously. And it was, of course, really funny to read about people whining about COVID-19 inside of their affidavits. But I think one of the biggest things was that this case was relating to COVID-19, and then we had to go on Zoom and then like actually do like our mock trial format, and everything had been changed because of COVID. So it was all just really interesting to see. And then something else is that the Zoom meetings were really, really interesting. So I know for speech, it's like you just present your speech kind of, you just do your speech and you're done. But for mock trial, you kind of like, it's back and forth dialogue between 2 different people. So when you're doing your cross-examinations, I'm asking a question and Miranda's answering me, and it's like back and forth. And if somebody's Wi-Fi is glitchy, then the whole thing becomes super bad.
Yeah, there was this one team where they were in the same room together, so their mics would just go, and the sound would be awful. And the judges would have to stop the timers, and there's so many technical difficulties. And although the case was pretty dense with the contract law that was involved this year, I thought the characters were amazing this year. And we had help from our local attorney, Jim Dunn, and Judge Allison Crable, who really helped with character this season. Well, she helps all the time, but it was really fun to work with her and Jim. So, I don't know. Nothing to add.
That's pretty much it. It was a great season, even though it kind of we did win the state, which was obviously a huge accomplishment, and we all did amazing, and our team was very well rounded, and we put in a lot of work because we do have practices like 3 days a week, so it was a little bit like taxing with school and like the whole pandemic and everything. But I think our team did a really good job of adjusting, and it was just everybody put in the work that was needed, and we got to a very great end goal.
Oh yeah, and then so before state we had 4 other trials that we had to go through, actually 5, and then we went 5-0 in like the preseason before state, and then we won regions, and which let us go to state, and then I think we won 1 tournament in state and lost 2, and I would have to say the last one I think it was rigged, but but we had fun, and I love this team and mock trial. It's a really great activity if you want to put your kids in it. It was really great.
And it was a repeat at state for our mock trial team as well. So
Yes.
we're really proud of that team. Thank you for being here. If the board has any questions.
Well, this is Tracy. I don't necessarily have a lot of questions other than all 3 of you guys and your resilience and like all your technology and stuff. And I know there's a lot of adults who are very COVID frustrated, but you guys seem to really have a good attitude still. So I appreciated that. So, and David, what grade are you in now, and where are you going to go to school? And are you going to do something that involves communication?
Right now I'm a sophomore, and as of now I haven't done too much thinking about what I want to major in that requires like a speech side of experience, if that makes sense at all. If anything, communications would be, good for writing, good for whatever the communications major might require. But with like putting in voices and like more postures into my speech, I think that's a lot of a strength for theater too, and that's something I've thought about as well. But as of now, not a lot. So I haven't gotten the biggest opportunity to expand and like go on to state or try other categories that might interest me as well, or might interest me going into another major in college. Yeah.
Nice.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks.
Rahima and Miranda, what about you?
Yeah.
When I ask this question, it's mostly because I'm looking for ideas. So. Plans for
I'm
the
sorry, I
future?
didn't quite get that.
Oh, yeah,
last.
me neither. No, plans for the future?
Oh,
My
yeah.
mic was
So
off.
actually, it's funny, I'm majoring in communications.
Well, there you go. I knew somebody had to be.
And I'm going to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. And I'm going to study communications at Annenberg School of Communication and Journalism, and I'll be on a pre-law track, actually, hopefully going to law school after my 4-year bachelor. Yeah.
Excellent. Rahima?
And I'm going to the University of Minnesota, and I'm majoring in political science.
Awesome.
Great.
Excellent.
Yeah. Superintendent Croxton.
I think all three of you are just a testament to how comfortable our students have become with technology and the skills around technology and communication, because communicating via technology is a completely different skill. David, I too was in Creative X back in the day. I have to say that was before the internet existed, and our script was...
I don't know if you're still speaking, but
Your mic was off.
on my end anyway.
Oh, no.
Oh, lost audio.
Yep, so...
They didn't look being rude and that was...
So I lost my audio. Can you hear me now? All right. So back in the day, I was also in Creative X, but that was long before the internet ever existed, and our script was typed on a typewriter and glued to construction paper.
Ooh.
So if you spilled on your script, it's kind of like a glitchy iPad. So I guess maybe you were preparing to be a superintendent in Creative
Ooh,
X.
there you go.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's clear that all of you are going places figuratively, and it's clear that Principal Doherty is going places actually.
Not that that's distracting at all.
Exactly.
Definitely not right.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate having you here, and thank you for joining us. Moving on to the Student Council report.
I don't believe that either of our student council co-presidents could make it tonight. I think that we've got some representatives who are still in the meeting, though, in case they want to do an impromptu update. I won't put them on the spot.
Oh, there you go. That was funny.
I saw some cameras turn off, so.
Yeah, quick log out.
Excellent use of
Yeah.
technology there.
Meeting.
They must be driving into a tunnel.
Right.
Moving on to action items. We have 2020-21 budget adjustments. Superintendent Gronseth, do you want to?
Yes, as you know, budgets are living documents that change over the course of the year, and this year has been especially that is the case. We've had many changes in both revenues and expenses, as both the state and federal government have provided different phases of funding for specific uses, and that in turn would change how we were using our revenues and changes in enrollment and everything. We've had quite a few changes, and I know that our business manager, Mr. Rigner, has been working, I don't know, double, triple overtime, trying to keep up with all of the changes that have been pretty constant this year. And we met with the Finance Committee and went over some of those changes. And it is coming forward to you now, the whole board, for consideration. And I will hand it over to Mr. Regner to fill in the gaps. He's here, right? There he is.
Thanks, Bill. I'll try and be quick, or a lot briefer than where the Finance Committee went through it fairly thoroughly. And you basically have a couple documents in front of you in the board packet. The first page is kind of an overview of all the different funds in the school district. As we've talked many years, there's the general fund, the food fund, the ComEd fund, and we split them up because the money is segregated and used for specific purposes or designated for those purposes. And then also, like within the general fund, we've got a bunch of funds that are a bunch of assigned monies that are for certain things and we have to use them for. That's why you have all those number of things on the outside. The second page then is kind of just a little more specific information on the general unassigned funds, which is obviously the biggest component of the general fund, in which we focus most of the time on during the year because it's 27, 28 million of the budget, which is the real driver of the school district. Maybe I'll just kind of start on the bottom and work my way up on the first page because those are fairly straightforward, the bottom ones. Line 69 is basically we have a trust fund which has our designated scholarship funds in it. Basically it just supports a couple of the Annexed and Mauer scholarships that are given out at the awards night to the seniors. Line 65 is basically a debt redemption fund. That's pretty simple. The levy money goes in there to pay, and our only item in there is basically the bond for the new school and the other improvements that were done, what's that, 4 or 5 years ago already. So basically the revenue from the levy comes in and we make the bond payment during the year. And if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in or we can catch them up at the end. Line 61 and 62 are basically a couple things that hopefully will end this year. 62 is the bond referendum. There's still a couple of items being finished up for work and these numbers are all as of July 1st on this side starting this year. The bond referendum, we had $129,000 left in there. We used up quite a bit of that. There's maybe a couple things that they're trying to finish up out there, get contracted done, or also some of those funds may be used for the final restroom project that you had talked about up at CSP Park previously. Line 58 is the Community Service Fund, or 04. That one is the one that has struggled, and a lot of the reasons is due to COVID. A lot of the revenues that come in on that program, it's basically a couple of things. It's the community ed, the adult programs, and then also the early childhood family education part of that. And just with COVID starting last March, a lot of the programs were curtailed and we were required to do like the daycare through there and those items. And also, so that really cut down on the revenue in that program. And then there's also been a change in how they do scholarships for some of the early childhood family education pieces of that, and we've lost some significant revenue on that portion too. So we are projected to run a deficit this year in that one. Hopefully it'll be a little bit better, but it's one of the ones that's been mainly affected by COVID. And then line 55, the food service fund has kind of been the opposite. That's doing fairly well the last couple of years because food service staff and the people involved in the buildings have done a good job of feeding the students, and everybody's been on the free meals the last couple of years, and it's done well because it's just worked well. They've done a good job of getting the food out to the students and everything over the past year since COVID's hit. So that one, we do have an excess fund in there from that, but that needs a lot of that. It's federal money, so it's really highly regulated, and it has to stay in the food service fund. Then we kind of get up into the general fund items. We do, on line 45, every August, we always talk about the Deferred Maintenance Fund, the LTFM. If you remember, those who've been on the board for a few years, this started about 4 or 5 years ago. It's really been a good program. The revenue is about, for us, is about half paid from the state and half levy, which is, pretty good with the state funding half of that. And they do allow you to do big projects, and we needed to do a roof, so we kind of spent the money ahead a little bit. And over the last couple of years, we've been trying to, you can see we have a negative balance there. We've been trying to pay that down over the last 3 years until the next big project is probably due. The operating capital fund is simply that they give us a certain amount of money to pay for things, curriculum, furniture, fixtures, those type of items, tangible items. And again, that's our one-to-one initiative with the computers are in there, the iPads, and we always transfer money to cover the payment on those leases every year, and that's about $140,000 that you see coming from it's all in the general fund, but we keep it a little bit segregated so we can tell where the funds are. Moving up then, the miscellaneous scholarships. It's just that, it's the miscellaneous scholarships or funds that people have they don't have a formal agreement, and that if they did, they would be in the other fund 8. But that's just some funds there that we can use that kind of more or less formalized. Concession fund, simply what it is, that didn't run at all this year, obviously, so it's a little bit negative. The high school activity, or the activity funds at the different schools, basically the money raised is the money spent. And then we have a number of them, and I won't go through them all, of assigned funds in the general fund, and that's money somewhat set aside for the different funds, and those are from number 14 down to number about 28. A couple of them that we'll highlight is number 21, the sign for operating the new high school. If you remember, when the high school was being built, we decided to try and put some money away in case the operation costs were going to, obviously went up with another school here. We have been able to not use them funds the last 3 or 4 years. It looks like this year, for a few reasons, which we'll get into, we're probably going to have to use some of those funds to help out the unassigned fund. That's basically line number 10, and that's, as you can see, we started the year with about a $4.9 million balance, and then the revenues, expenditures that are projected to come out of there are 28 million. Those numbers are up from when we did the adopted budget last June because of what Bill had talked about, Superintendent Gronseth earlier. There's been a lot of funds that have flowed into the general fund this year, cover for some of the COVID expenses. Most of the funds that have been assigned so far were for things that we needed to spend extra. Some of the housekeepers, the tables, the sanitizers, the extra daycare staff, some of the extra planning the teachers did, and the extra, there's a multiple of things that those funds went for as far as the, to continue the school and to keep basically everybody safe and continue the education, and it was a new items. The one thing that has, we have dropped enrollment some this year below projections, and some of that's probably due to COVID. So we are, if you look there, the revenues are less than the expenditures this year, and we are spending down the funds. When we flip to the second page, we'll see that a little bit more. As we've talked before, school finance is really about enrollment, and there's still some things and also the other thing, big number in there, it doesn't affect this year, but it'll go forward, is, the state, how much are they going to allocate to us? The state, I think the session ended today up at the House and the Senate, and I'm pretty sure I haven't really followed it yet today, I haven't been home, but they probably did not get anything settled, and they have to go in special session for the funding for the school districts. So a lot of things are still really in limbo. There's been some talk about, providing some relief for the enrollment drop, because, we're not the only district in the state that has an enrollment drop. So there's still some things that could impact us positively and or negatively. Usually we try to be as conservative as we can on this item here. This year, things really did tighten up some of the the assumptions, and there's just a lot of moving parts to this yet. I hate to even say that, we're a year, only a month left of the year, month and a half, but there's still a lot of things moving. And even for next year, there's even more items moving. If you would flip over to the second page, that's where those two numbers in the middle, the revenues and expenditures, kind of tie out. And this is 1 year of our rollout that we typically use. Basically, come next month, we'll do the adopted budget for the next fiscal year, or FY22, and we'll continue on from FY21. Basically, line 266 is where we started the year with our fund balance, and then 269 was our actual revenues. Lines 270 through 283 are basically things that we identified that we know are going to be different this year from last year, either additions to the revenue or subtractions. If you can see down in lines 278 through about 281, those three lines, those are kind of pandemic related things, additional funding that we have had, and they're pretty much been offset by additional expenses down on the additional lines below there. They kind of dispersed 293 and 294 in those items there. So, we probably had an influx of revenue which covered the influx of expenses. Where we are short is probably covering some of the revenue that we did not receive or not going to receive with the enrollment being down. There's a couple others. One item, I think it was a total 140. With the interest rates being so low, we're going to get less interest income this year. We didn't charge admission to the events this year. Drop some funds. So your total revenue for the year is predicted to be about $28 million. And that's with, if you look on line 283, 417,000 transferred in. Then line 286 is basically our expenses from last year, and kind of the same theory there. You go down the things that changed for the year. Projected expenditures of 28 million, just over 28 million again there. Kind of to tie it all out, we kind of put it in the middle there, lines 284, 285. We're going to drop about $78,000 that our revenue is, I guess, actually under expenses because it's negative. And, so our fund balance is going to drop, and that's with the transfer of the fund from the assigned funds. I think I usually refer to that as kind of a savings account or an offset. So, but we still meet, I guess the good news is we still meet our fund balance goal down on line 306 of about 60 days, and that one's kind of varied over the years. I guess kind of, to wrap it up just a little bit, the budget's tightened up, due to COVID and some of the revenue shortfalls and some of that stuff. There are a couple other items that have passed to Congress that we're still waiting for some guidance on how to spend a little bit. There was if you remember back, like December 28th, there was a package that passed the legislature in Washington, and for lack of a better, I guess that's called ESSER 2 is what we'll refer to our funds as, ESSER 2. And then there was a package that passed, probably the American Relief Act, I think, or something like that was called, in March or something, under the new president. And those funds, too, we're going to receive probably about $700,000 under the first one that passed in December. And I think the number is about 1.6 on the second one. Still working on how we can spend those funds. They do put a lot of requirements on it. It appears that these funds are a little more open-ended, that we can use than the last funds have been. So that may be able to help some of the revenue shortfalls. We can use that money to offset some of those other items or other expenses we currently have. And I guess that's kind of the project for the next couple of months, to sort out the budgets for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 in essence, and see how we can spend those funds. There is those funds, I think the one goes to like fiscal year 22, 23, and the other goes to 24. So there is quite a time period to use those funds up as best you can supplement them. And like I said, they are a little more open-ended as far as how you can use the funds than the previous ones have been, it appears. The government, the legislature still has some money under the 2 program that they're deciding on that is kind of earmarked. It appears to be for summer school, but they haven't really given a whole lot of guidance on that yet. Hopefully that'll come out before summer school starts, and we'll know how to spend those funds or what we can use the money for. But that's kind of, I tried to go over it. There's a lot of lines that go behind this, and I got Young in our office helped quite a bit. We put this together. We did spend a lot of time on it this year and make a lot more assumptions than we usually make, but it's just there's still a lot of things that are moving, and hopefully, in the next month or 2 we can tie some of them down, particularly for next year, and see exactly where we're at. So if there's some questions on that, otherwise this would be my recommendation for the revised budget for FY for this year for 21, and then in June we'll be back with the adopted budget for 22.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim, for all your hard work this year. I know it's been extra challenging, and we really, really appreciate it. Is there any initial discussion? This did go through the Finance Committee as well. Hearing no initial discussion, would someone be interested in making a motion to accept the budget adjustments?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again. We'll move on to insurance for the 2-year cycle. I will turn it over to Superintendent Gronseth.
Thank you. We've been discussing this for a bit now. After our best and final proposals for insurance, we started looking more at a self-insurance model, and it went to the Finance Committee, and then, as you know, last week we had a study session to learn more about it. Since that time, we've met with the St. Peter Education Association leadership team and walked them through it as well. And they seem to be amenable to the idea of going to a self-insurance model, given the market and how it all works out for us at this time. I've not received any further questions, but certainly if there are further questions, or if Tim has anything, oh look, Darren's driving now. If Tim has anything more to add that we haven't discussed already?
He went forward pretty thoroughly at the study session. It's been a whirlwind month in the insurance industry with a lot of the changes that are going on, and it just seems like, according to our representatives from National Insurance Company that have been with us, they ran, like they said, 1,000 proposals or 1,000 alternatives on this thing, and it really just appears that this is a good decision for us. I mean, a month ago, it wasn't even really kind of on our radar, but with the changes at the co-op, and then Blue Cross's final bids, it just appears that was their recommendation, and that's the way I think we should go.
I have one question.
Absolutely.
What is the timeline? If we delayed this for one more month, are we in trouble, or do we have to make a decision right now?
The insurance for the school year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we really need to get, and then after we decide where we go, we need to have an open enrollment period for the members or the employees. So it would be really hard to delay it until June, because that would give us very little time to do, anything else, or to get things rolled out. And the other deadline, or not really deadline, but the other thing we come up against is a lot of the, obviously after the school year's over, we don't have as much interaction with the employees to get their, because that's when they can open enroll, and the open enrollment is simply when they can move around in different plans, and we need to give them some time to do that. So I guess it would be really hard to delay it a lot, to delay it really at all.
Good question. Just so the public is familiar, we had a whole study session on this, and I know that staff and the superintendent have been working on these proposals. The term we've been throwing around is self-insurance, but it really is Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's just really about how that gets paid and the risk gets managed. And so if you're a district employee, your plan doesn't change. The way that you access healthcare doesn't change. The amount of healthcare you get doesn't change. It's more of a funding model. And while this proposal would move us to being self-insured, that is sort of a misnomer when it comes to managing risk too, because our risk would be capped by a separate risk insurance policy. And so we'd be funding more on the front end, but we would also realize any savings instead of that going to the insurance company. And if we did have staff that needed to access those policies, which in my opinion, and I'm sure all of ours, is why they're there, that is okay. And we have, their care would be exactly the same, and the district would be protected from a catastrophic loss by that other insurance policy. Is that fair to say?
That was an excellent summary, yes.
I have a question.
That's really wrapped it up well. Ben, maybe if you ever want to change careers, insurance might be.
That would not be a good idea. I have told you the sum total I know of insurance, so.
So the presenters the other night, how do they make their money? Because that wasn't clear to me. If they're getting, do they get a percentage of if we agree to this deal, or I guess I just didn't understand how they.
Where they fit
But
in.
before you answer, I want to just quip, I think the genius of them is they get paid either way, so.
Exactly.
They get a percent of the premium to be our representatives. If you go back a number of years, we really didn't have a representative. The first year HITA came out, we kind of did it ourselves with the help of the co-op, prepared the bids and things like that. National Insurance Services, we've actually done business with them for, long before I was here, for a number of years. We've had the long-term disability and life insurance and those items. They've been our reps on those. And they kind of approached us this is the third HITA thing I think we've been through with them, the third bids, but 5 years ago of being basically our agent for health insurance also. At the time, Dr. Peterson was here and was the superintendent, and we did a number of reference checks on them on the health insurance side, and they all came back really good, actually, real positive. So that's when we went with them about 5 years ago. And basically, most schools have a representative like that, or it's kind of like our agent. Things have gotten so complicated with the HITA things. And over the last couple of HITA bids, they've helped us immensely on the second bid, getting our premiums down, and probably have saved more in premium than we pay them, honestly. And we're also involved with them with life insurance, or with our life insurance. They also do the dental insurance for us. We are self-insured on our dental plan and have been for probably ever, as far as I know. Dental's a little bit different in the fact that the policy, it's kind of, the policy number is capped. You only get up to like $750 a payment, so there's not the same complexity in that. But the self-insurance on the dental has worked out well for us over the years. What kind of, like I said, they're our agent, they're working for us. They go in and, they kind of negotiate sometimes with insurance companies to say, hey, your premium's too high, you got to bring it down. So they've been real good to work with since I've been here. And like I said, they get paid 1% of the premium. But I think they've saved us more than that over the last 5 years.
So I think you clearly stated that whether we decide to go self-insured tonight or not makes no difference in what they make. Is that correct?
Yeah, our premium will be our premium will be pretty much the same either way. You know, the one thing with the self-insurance, we get to set the premium. They do help us. They've got a gentleman that he's kind of the backroom numbers guy, and he runs the numbers, and they help us set. I don't get too deep in the weeds here, but like the stop losses that Ben alluded to there, you know, they help us set those, and you know, I think it's probably Blue Cross or somebody else, you know, kind of like it's reinsurance that if our total claims get over a certain amount, or an individual's claim gets above a certain amount, then that's reinsured out, and we get paid that. We don't really pay that; we get paid that back. The reinsurance pays that, and that's part of the premium for everybody that they calculate in. But yeah, they're basically it's 6 of one, half dozen of another if we're self-insurance or if we go direct with Blue Cross for our agents.
Thank you.
Good questions, yes.
We had the opportunity to sit in on the study session and listen, and I believe we were in on a smaller meeting about this with the Finance Committee. I do not have a concern that these people are operating as a fiduciary on behalf of the school. That being said, I'm going to get to my point here, but if I'm faced with a complex decision such as this, and the ramifications of this are long-term, this is not one and done, we're going down a pathway here that could go for multiple years, and the ramifications of it are potentially unforeseen. If I'm in a situation like this and I have to analyze it, I listen to my fiduciaries, but I bring in somebody else and say, beat up what they just told me. I don't think we've had that opportunity. I've done my own research. I have no red flags, but I will say I don't have enough information to make the decision. So tonight, I'm going to abstain from the vote, so I'll go along with the group, and so that's all I have.
I appreciate that, Dr. Sullivan. Thank you.
Yeah, just to echo that, I felt like we had a good discussion, or a good learning session, but I never felt like the board actually had a discussion about it, and all of a sudden it comes up for a vote, and so that's what kind of took me aback tonight. With the information I've learned, I think it's a good idea, but I didn't remember anyone kind of saying, you know, I think you bring up a great point of what's the opposite side? What does this look like? What are we doing to a school board 10 years from now? You know, and I guess that hasn't really been presented, or if it has, I haven't really absorbed that this is what's best for the St. Peter School District, you know, in 2031. So.
With that being said, so are we voting on this? This is like a 2-year cycle. So in 2 years, will it all go out to vote again? And will Blue Cross and whoever else bid on that again? And what would be the disadvantage? You know what I mean? So if we do this for 2 years, maybe we decide then our claims look different in 2 years and we can go back? I mean, is that right?
Yeah, really.
Every 2 years, this public law changed. I think this is our 4th cycle. It's called the HITA, Health Insurance Transparency Act. You're required every 2 years as a school to go out and get bids. You're required to get at least 3 bids, one of which must be from the acronym is PEEP, the Public Employers Insurance Program, I think is the short of that. This year we went out and got about 7 bids. Maybe a little background. You know, we were with the South Central Co-op for a number of years on insurance. Basically, that's a large pool of schools and some cities and stuff. And then basically, South Central Co-op is self-insured, and their provider, the person that really does the paperwork, is kind of has been Blue Cross forever. As a public, I think as a public entity, South Central Co-op had to go out and put their servicer, Blue Cross, put that out for bids. And that happened right in the middle of when our bids were out. And it came back that Medica won the bid for South Central Co-op. So if we stayed with the co-op, next year at this time, it would transfer from Blue Cross to Medica, who would be the servicer, and we would be, through the co-op. In the meantime, Blue Cross, there's two sets of HITA bids. There's the first bid, and then there's the second bid. In between the time we got the first bid and the second bid is when that kind of happened at the co-op. And so then Blue Cross Blue Shield gave us, for lack of a better word, a direct bid, not through the co-op because they were no longer with the co-op. And that's when the self-insurance portion bid, they actually gave two parts to their bid. One where we would just pay them the premium and they administer it all. And the second part was a self-insurance bid where they still administer it, and the plan and everything to the employees is exactly the same. The only thing is it's kind of funded by the school district itself instead of by Blue Cross Blue Shield. In 2 years, we will, to answer Tracy's question, I think it was Tracy's question, we're required to go back out and get bids again from everybody. And we've always had some discussions with the co-op. They wanted to keep us as a customer, and we've had a great long-standing experience with them. Just the numbers are such that the recommendation is to go with Blue Cross Blue Shield directly and not through the co-op at this time. But people bid in 2 years because they're required to. This year we probably had 7 or 8 bids ranging from Medica Direct. I'm trying to think, Health Partners, the co-op, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I don't have them written down in front of me that bid on it. And yes, we have to go back out and bid this again. The hope would be, honestly, to stay on the self-insurance plan because what you want to do is even out the premium. For those of you on the board, was it 3 years ago when we had a high claims year, our premium went up 15%. So that could happen if we have a high, that's going to happen regardless. I guess the selling point in talking with our guys from National Insurance, if we have a bad year on our insurance claims, we're going to pay for that the next year. There's no cap with self-insurance or with direct insurance. If you have high claims, your premiums will go up. It's just the timing of it. And so the short answer to that is, yeah, in 2 years we can go back out for bids. The long answer is we would hope to be able to stay self-insurance because we want to try and smooth that out and build up a reserve. It's kind of like, you want to build up a good reserve to be able to do that. And, in 2 years you can go back to self-insurance. I can't, nobody can guarantee you what the premium is going to be on either one of the plans.
Did you have more to add to that, Superintendent Constant?
Because, for any of you that have maybe had an accident with your car, if your premium is going to go up. If you have a lot of claims, they're going to go up. And that's what we've seen in the past. And I guess that's kind of why our guys from National Insurance Services are recommending us go to the self-insurance model.
I just wanted to clarify that the reserve that Mr. Regner was talking about it's a separate reserve that is just this insurance account. It's one of those accounts that we call a one-way account because the money can only go into it, and then those dollars have to be spent on health insurance or paying the costs of the claims or programs like the wellness program, which we currently have and we would plan to continue. But right now, when we paid those premiums, the co-op then gives us some of those premiums back to run our wellness committee, and we would just run those programs ourselves. But those reserves are different than the reserves we were just talking about a minute ago with the budget.
And you, Member Stewart, you actually brought up one of the points that made me kind of feel better about this, was that 3 years ago, we had really high claims because our staff needed to access that health care, and our rates went up. But we're only 3 years removed from that, and this is the cheapest option. So yes, if we have high claims years, our costs go up, but that has a relatively short memory, in my opinion, because it's only been 3 years.
Yeah.
So I really do feel like we have a chance to revisit this in 2 years, and we are carrying insurance so that we're not, if we do have a high claims year, there's a cap on what we'll have to pay. We do run the risk of having higher rates, but we had guaranteed higher rates with the more traditional insurance in the second year. And we've seen, in the last 15 years of us having a more traditional plan, those rates going up. Vice Chair Lokensgaard, you've been working more with negotiations, 10% a year?
Yeah, I can. I think that in this plan, I've also done some research, Bill, and I totally get what you're saying where you'd like a secondary.
Absolutely.
A secondary person to look at it. I guess when it comes down to it, we get the increases no matter if we're with Blue Cross or we're with Medica or we're with the co-op or we're on our own. We're gonna get increases in healthcare. That seems to be a pretty normal thing over the past few years. With this plan, I think we have a little bit more control and more ability to, it doesn't matter who it is, we're gonna have risk. I think that's ultimately what we're talking about, is mitigating the risk. And I guess after the presentation and after running a few of the scenarios in my head, which nobody wants to be there, but it certainly seems like the way to go to me. So that's my 2 cents.
And just to understand too, like for any like employees of this is for all of our bargaining units, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
And so when I heard self-insured, and because I'm a silly person, like there's nobody in St. Peter's schools that's going to be looking at what, anybody is doing at the doctor. Like that's all still processed with Blue Cross Blue Shield. We just get a new card, right? They get a new card, maybe has a new ID number, but everything else kind of feels the same, correct?
Yeah, it was exactly. They'd get a new card, but other than that, nothing changes.
Okay.
From the user side.
And that's one nice thing with sticking with Blue Cross. The plans are exactly the same. There's, they have all the information already. To the employees, it should be seamless. The change is a little bit on the accounting end, the back end at the district office.
Yeah, when we were initially discussing this and we were looking at potentially staying with the co-op, that would mean that we'd be switching insurance carriers from Blue Cross to Medica. And certainly it can be done. Organizations do it all the time. But is it disruptive? Does it cause headaches or questions? Is there work to get that done? Yeah. So with this proposal, we have a favorable bid. We do not have to migrate insurance companies, and we can reevaluate after 2 years. We're not locked in for too long, so I'm comfortable with it.
And the premiums that employees pay, is that decided like per bargaining unit, or has that been decided?
No, that's an across the board. When there is an increase or whatever, that applies to all.
But like starting for like next, like the 21-22 school year?
There would be no increase for
Okay.
anyone. Yep.
I didn't want to say things without
Yeah.
making stuff
That
up.
was one of the reasons I think our representatives really thought this was a good time to go with this, because we could go with no increase for the next year for FY22. The premiums will be exactly the same as FY21 this year.
And that's a nice thing.
Yes, yeah. So,
Excellent. Well, great discussion. That was our initial discussion. So
Gotta do it backwards.
no, we do it, but we do both. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the, what am I approving here? The insurance for this, the self-insurance model.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Discussion,
Oh,
further discussion?
yeah.
Yep.
Further discussion.
Yeah.
Treasurer Carlson.
I just want to, there's questions as far as how this plays out in contract talks that I am not comfortable with at this time, so I will not be voting for it. I think it's a great idea. I think it saves money, but it might complicate things in negotiations.
Any follow-up to that?
I love that we have a board and we all get to have 1/7 of an opinion.
Awesome. All right, hearing no further discussion, call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Abstained.
Thank you. I believe the motion carries. I appreciate that, and thank you, Tim and Superintendent Gronseth and everyone who worked hard on that, B and others. Moving on to agenda item number 3. This is the non-renewal of probationary teacher contracts. This is something that is a regular occurrence at this time of year for school districts. Superintendent Gronseth?
Absolutely. This is an annual action item. There are a number of reasons why a non-tenured teacher might be non-renewed, such as changes in staffing needs, less frequently because of performance concerns. This particular person that is listed on the back side of this page, it's connected with licensing. Sometimes we are required to non-renew someone if they have a certain kind of license, like a Tier 1 license, and so that is the case with this evening.
Thank you. This is a resolution. Any initial discussion?
I'm just a very curious person, so I understand that. Can this person reapply though? I mean, so we don't renew them, but they can still reapply with that Tier 1 license?
Right. With a Tier 1 license, you can only use that for so long without
Okay.
us putting it back out. So we would need to repost the position.
Okay.
And if there were someone with a higher level license, then they would need to be considered before we could rehire someone with a lesser license.
Okay.
Have our non-renewal process, like every year, has it always been a resolution?
I believe so. I think it's
Okay.
state law.
I just,
Yeah,
it seems familiar to me.
there are a couple of different ways to do it. I believe last year, I think I was tuned in by this time last year, and I think there was you did a resolution for each person that was on the list,
That would seem excessive.
and there were like 9 of them. And but what you can do is pass a resolution that you have a list of people, and then you can just do one resolution rather than separate ones. Just so happens we have just the one at this point. There may be a few more adjustments next month's based on what we find out from the legislature on how we can use some of our funding.
Am I correct in assuming that we need to state the name of this teacher?
Yep.
With the resolution, do we have it, like, do we have to read that, the resolution? I mean, we're doing a resolution, because I'm not seeing a resolution.
Yeah, do you have the resolution?
No.
Oh, it's just not as, it's not in whereas form?
Is this?
No.
We'll head to the Google machine.
So it would be like,
I think it was on board book.
Yeah, but the actual resolution wasn't there.
I thought I saw it on there when I went
oh,
over
well.
it.
We need that Jeopardy music again.
Okay. I think I'm ready. Should I just read it for you?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Amazing.
Whereas the first 3 consecutive years of a teacher's first teaching experience in Minnesota in a single district is deemed to be a probationary period of employment, and whereas if a teacher has previously committed the probationary period in another Minnesota district, the probationary period is 1 year, and whereas during the probationary period, an annual contract may not be renewed based on a decision by the school board, therefore be it resolved that the attached list of teachers are being recommended for non-renewal. Ryan Timmerman.
Would someone move the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the resolution? I call the resolution. We'll do a roll call vote. Clerk Dixon.
Aye.
Member Soderlund.
Aye.
Treasurer Carlson.
Aye.
Member Stewie.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lokenskar.
Aye.
Chair Leonard, aye. Resolution carries. Thank you. All right, we will move on to action item number 4, which is the second/final reading of revisions to the policy manual. The chair of the policy committee, Vicki Hager, is not present today. She had a migraine tonight and couldn't make the meeting. But we do have members Stewie and Soderlund from that committee. I don't know if either of you want to say anything, or Superintendent Gronseth, if you want to comment.
Well, the policy committee has continued its work. We have great conversations while we're doing this and consider a lot of things. One of the policies, policy 515, was actually on the list last month, but we found that we'd missed a few notations on there, and so we went back to it, made a few more changes, and it is ready for its second reading this evening, and as well as the others, which are listed.
We haven't heard anything from anybody.
Anything?
Any questions, initial questions? Thank you so much for your continued work on these policies. Would someone offer a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept the second readings on all the policies that are listed on the agenda. I don't need to read each number, do I? Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5 is the acceptance of individual contracts. Superintendent Gronseth.
Yes, there are 3 contracts for you to consider tonight. One is for Shay Rorcassie, who is taking on the role of Activities Director after Jordan Paula has moved on to another district. He's worked for us as a teacher and a coach and is transitioning to this position. Another is for one of our new student support liaisons, Barak Ahmed, who is filling the position that was opened when Afi Sagat took on the Education Equity Coordinator position. And then the third is for Janice Sikora, who's taking on the leadership role of our alternative programs. It was originally discussed that this would be included in the principal's contract. However, that is currently being negotiated, so the position doesn't exist within that contract at this time. So it was decided that an individual contract would be used as a placeholder until the principals have finished their negotiations process. And so then next year, this contract would move into the principal's unit.
Any initial discussion?
Is that why there's only 1 year
Yeah.
listed?
Yep.
Okay.
Chair Leonard, I have reviewed these contracts with Superintendent Cronseth.
Excellent, thank you. Hearing no additional initial discussion, would someone make a motion?
I so move to accept the 3 individual contracts in front of us.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Just want to congratulate Shay, Barak, and Jana. Thank you. That was the end of our action items. We move on to informational items, and we have 2. The first is the Minnesota Valley Education District, or MVED's organizational structure.
Yes, this year, MVED underwent a process to review their organizational structure, and the goal was, and I should mention that Member Stewie sits on the school board for MVED, and so has been part of that process too, and I'll give you an opportunity to jump in here.
Okay.
But the goal was to provide for long-term stability for MVED and ensure that the staffing structure was adequate to meet the needs that they're seeing in all of the member districts of MVED. And the structure that was decided on is a combination of kind of past structures and things that have been tried out as pilot projects of sorts this year. They've decided to stay with a special education director, and that will be a full-time director. It's Sarah McGonigal, who has served as the director this year. Although this year she remained an employee of Mankato Public Schools and contracted part of her time, I think 90% of her time. It was decided that she would become an MVED employee and have 100% of her time dedicated to MVED. So they will continue also with a coordinator model. The coordinators help the member districts with things like due process paperwork and advising IEP teams on the best strategies to support students. And so the coordinators will continue, and they also help with some decision making and helping to support families too through this process of understanding what it means to receive special services. And in the past, there's been a supervising superintendent role, which was replaced by an executive director this year, which Dr. Olson filled that role to kind of take them through this process this year. They're going back to a supervising superintendent because there are certain tasks that require them to have a licensed superintendent at least advising them, and I'll be taking on that role as July 1st. And they also have included some contracted services with Mankato that they'll be continuing. Found it helpful to have some of the experience that their special education director has. And so there's a contract in place where I believe it's a monthly meeting that he will have with Sarah, the director of MVED, and as needed basis as well. So there's an agreement in place that has opportunities for either party to opt out when they feel it's appropriate. Another new position that they're adding is a behavior interventionalist. This person is going to be working with student support teams at all of the member districts and also with individual teachers to really develop best strategies for addressing behavioral needs of students. This is in part to meet the requirements of what they call CEIS, which is Coordinated Early Intervening Systems. And MVED has been an identified district for CEIS, which means that there is a disproportionality in some of their identifications. So a CEIS program is designed to work with students in general education who have not been identified as needing special education needs to develop ways of intervening so that they can find success within the regular classroom. Once that process goes through, if it's still determined that they need special services to be successful, then they are identified. But the goal of this program is to identify fewer students in specific groups of students. I believe, I don't want to misquote what they're identified for, St. Peter, and you're right, officially identified when you have the same theme occurring 3 years in a row. St. Peter School District is in year 2 of specific data. And so for us, it is our Latinx students who are identified as emotionally behavioral disability in our early childhood programs. And so the work that we will be doing with CEIS this year is centered around that population specifically. If we were to have a third year of that theme, we too would need to set aside a percentage of our special education funding to dedicate specifically to this. So we'll be working on that this year to see if we can make some differences in the disproportionality that we're seeing. And sometimes it's just the way it is. Sometimes it's just those students that have those needs. And so once you've been identified as a CEIS district, like MVED has, that stays in place until your data changes. And so they'll be having trainings around multi-tiered systems of support and interventions, working with the behavioral interventionist as part of those efforts and part of their structural changes. So as I mentioned, Member Stewie sits on their school board and has had many of these discussions as well. And so I would be remiss if I didn't ask if you had things to add.
I think you covered it pretty well, so. I mean, with the over-identification, sometimes it is just truly that, just those kids really truly needed that. Other times, I really think it's just teachers really just wanting to get that student help. And sometimes they deem that to be the best path to get them help. But, we don't want everybody in special education either. So I think it's all right for us to be able to concentrate on that a little bit and maybe get help for these kids other ways, so.
And I did include an organizational chart that they've developed that kind of lays all that out as well. But I just wanted to share an update with their structure and what is happening with MVED.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Member Stewie, thanks for serving on that.
Always a pleasure.
Our second and last informational item is the first reading of revisions to the policy manual. It looks like policy 534.
Yes, policy 534 is unpaid meal charges. There really wasn't any change to how we currently process. There were just a few wording changes and the number of the policy itself.
We did have more than one on our list, but as we came across them, we just decided they would be better to look at during the summer because there might be handbook changes with them, so. Yeah. We weren't just sitting around doing nothing this month. We actually talked for a long time to decide not to bring it forward, so.
Right. And there was one on wellness that is quite lengthy, and then at the last paragraph says, it is required that you have a committee of student, staff, and board members to develop this and document it. So we'll be developing a committee to work through that process.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Members, if you have questions or thoughts about that policy, please get them to the committee directly or to Superintendent Granza. Moving on to reports. Building principals.
Good evening, everyone. Early childhood, we're wrapping things up. Our last, of course, next week will be our last week of classes. We are taking advantage of the nice weather and getting kids outside into parks and having those walking field trips and nature hikes that we tend to do this time of the year. Some classes have been able to make a transition trip to South. Our early childhood special education classes are making trips to South for that transition, so we're excited that the building has opened up so we're able to do that. We do continue to accept registrations for fall 21-22 for preschool and ECFE, and we really encourage families to give us a call or check online to get our contact information. We'd like to, those spots are filling up. We still do have them, and our district does have that commitment to making sure we have spots for every child that is looking for a preschool program. So please reach out if you have interest. And then lastly, just wanted to give a little bit of an update in our food distribution program. As you may recall, Read and Feed was put on hold last year and we did food distribution. We will continue with that food distribution model this summer as well. We were able to get several thousands of meals out to kids, and we'll continue with that. I would like to encourage families to keep an eye on social media and information coming home in backpacks regarding that program. That program will begin on Wednesday, June 9th, and distribution will take place at South, North, and the middle school on Wednesdays throughout the summer, as well as there will be some stops around the community where our van will deliver, and those deliveries also will be on Wednesdays. So just a reminder to families to be watching for that information so that they can take part in that program. That's all I have. Doreen?
All right, thanks, CTA. Just like early childhood, we're wrapping up this school year, organizing our summer programming, and already working on plans for fall. So some of the things that have been happening is like early childhood coming to South. We have been going to North. So last week, Dave Rebar and Laura Zenda were able to organize a whole day with staggered classes going over to North. So we appreciate Darren serving as a host, and the first graders came back very excited about their new school, and I think they were most surprised to learn that it has straight long howls instead of the circle like we have at South. We also had the opportunity to have the St. Peter Fire Department come and visit our school. Last year, some of those tours that typically happen for our kindergartners didn't happen, so they held sessions on site outside with both our kindergarten and our first grade classes. Officer Hughes also organized a police car visit, and Janet Ireland helped coordinate the fingerprinting that we typically do with kindergartners. And again, that was done with both kindergarten and first grade. Last week, we had about 90 families from kindergarten with incoming kindergarten students take advantage of some private tours that we were offering. So teachers picked them up at the door, took them down, and showed them classroom and gave them the opportunity to get their questions answered about kindergarten, and it went very, very smoothly. So I would love to thank the kindergarten teachers for hosting that. We do have a few families that we were not able to squeeze in last week, or there was a conflict, so we will be wrapping up those tours this Thursday. Currently, I believe we have about 120 that are registered for kindergarten, about 125, and we are working on another approximately 125, excuse me, not 125, just 25 more to see if we can get those applications completed. So we're on our way to getting those kindergarten numbers back up, so stay tuned with that information.
Greetings from North Elementary, everybody. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that 125 plus 125 during 250 would be pretty awesome for kindergarten. And I know I'm disappointing everybody on the board by not having a moving background. My family was gonna be really impressed if I could do a school update from the back seat of our car back from Laconia. So yeah. North, everything's going really well. What I've really enjoyed the last couple of weeks is a tradition that was started when North just became an elementary again, and we always make a big deal of bring attention to our fourth graders, and we call it fourth grade recognition, graduation photos. Those are up again this year, like wrapping around the office with all of our fourth graders' pictures on cool little graduation hats, yearbooks going out, our portfolios. You know, it's feeling like a regular school year, and we've been talking a lot about last year at this time, just not having that closure, and just kind of that empty space in our heart. And now we have that back, so we're excited about that and feeling that energy. As Ms. Zelke said at South, we've been having the incoming second graders last week. Was a great visit, a couple days where all the homerooms stopped in. That went really well. We were able to. The big excitement was either the playground or the straight hallways, like Doreen mentioned. So either way, I think they were pretty excited to call North their new school. We will be continuing that transitional support tomorrow and Thursday evenings from 5 to 6:30. Basically, the first graders, when they came over, they were doing their training to get to know the building so that they could show their parents or whoever is bringing them in Tuesday or Thursday evening around the building for a self-guided tour or an open house. All of our second grade teachers and our specialists have a QR code in their classroom space so that families can scan that with their phone and listen to or watch a greeting video by all of the teachers, including the principal as well. So I'll be there to just greet the families. I'm excited to meet all of our new students for next year. North is going to be a busy place this summer. We have Saints OT with some numbers I hear are going way up, which is great. So we're going to have all of Saints overtime there this summer. All of the summer school programs, kindergarten through fourth grade, and as Doreen mentioned, or excuse me, ET mentioned, breeding feed set up. And then the rec department's doing some stuff out on our grounds too. So there'll be full days at North, which I'm always excited about. Keep that building going. We finished up the first year of a program that Maggie Carlson, a counselor at the high school, and Matt Lewis engineered this year called those fourth grade buddies. It was fun. They were able to get together last week for a little pizza party celebration. I believe there were about 15 to 20 students that worked with our fourth grade students, mostly all over iPads. They meet weekly. They met weekly with them, and then they did some closure last week with some pizza. So that was a really great program. I can see that expanding to some of our other grade levels, or at least our other homerooms. And then I do have to do a big old shout out for a retiree at North. I'm going to be losing my partner in crime, Mrs. Berg. Barb Berg is going to be retiring at the end of June. Barb has been with us for over 25 years. She's had put up with me for the last quite a few, actually 8 years, 7 years, something like that. And she's been a great colleague and a partner, has done fabulous work for the district. So I just want to congratulate Barb Berg on her retirement at the end of June. And that's it for North.
I did want to mention.
I believe that Mr. Graff is attending the middle school band concert this evening, so I hope I'm not butting in front of him. Things at the high school are, as every other school year, becoming super focused on graduation day, which is Friday, May 28th at 8 p.m. But leading up to that, again, as always, it's a crazy, busy 2 weeks to the finish line. Our high school musical was about a week and a half ago and was fantastic. I hope that everybody got to see that. Our band concert, our spring band concert, was last Thursday evening in the gym. And that was exciting to get to see those kids finally get to perform for the first time in the year. Choir, the spring choir concert will look a little bit different than the usual Pops concert. It is a 2-evening event with each choir performing separately. So choir is tomorrow and Wednesday night. NHS induction ceremony is Wednesday evening. Senior awards ceremony is Sunday afternoon. Next Wednesday and Thursday are the usual senior days. The events will look slightly different due to COVID and COVID protocols, but we're still hosting some special events for our graduates. And then, of course, graduation on the 28th. As luck would have it, the state guidance for venue capacity is changing as of May 28th. And so thankfully our graduates will each be able to have 8 tickets in case they have that many people who want to attend in-person graduation in our gym at the high school. And as for the school board's participation in graduation, we're having a meeting tomorrow. Other graduation guidance has not been released yet, so we're unsure as of yet about things like the choirs participation, the band's participation, as well as the school board's handing out of the diplomas, which I think is a really special part of that ceremony for the kids. So stay tuned. Those of us at the high school will be in touch with the school board about what exactly your participation will look like at this year's graduation.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you all. We move on to superintendent's report.
Okay, I gotta try to do this with a straight face now, right? Hello, this is Bill Gronseth, Superintendent of St. Peter Schools with your monthly update. So I thought I'd start with a line that families have come to expect every Sunday night at 6:30. And many people have shared that they really appreciate the weekly calls this year with the uncertainty that the pandemic brought. You know, some of them say, they say, all right, come on, everybody, Bill's calling. Or they just hit, like decline, I'll read the email. But either way, they've shared that they've appreciated that kind of ongoing information. The Minnesota Safe, I think they'll be equally happy that this Sunday will be the final weekly update of the year, which I don't know, I'll have to plan something special for that one, I think. I don't know. Maybe it'll come out at 6:32 instead of 6:30 or something. But the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan officially ends on your last full day of school at the close of the school year. So for that, for us, that is May 28th. So just hours before graduation, that will close. As Principal Engeldinger shared, it means that we will have a gym full of people. However, because it's more than 500 people, masks will still be required. But it will be the first time since I've been here that I've seen 1,000 people in the gym. So that will be quite a celebration. It doesn't mean, however, that we won't have required protocols for summer programming. It's just that they have not released that yet. So we know that we will have continued cleaning protocols and air handling protocols. What exactly it all entails has yet to be seen. So we're just waiting on that. I also wanted to mention that each spring we start off our planning for the following school year, and that part of that discussion is looking at enrollment numbers and course enrollments, staff retirements, and talking about the needs that we see at each site. And the pandemic has changed a lot. We are seeing a lot more mental health needs, a lot more families that need to be connected to services, whether that be medical care or health care or extra food or hotspots or technology. We've seen that our families need a lot more support and that the students are needing more academic interventions. As we plan for staffing, we're trying to increase our capacity to meet these needs. And it led to a discussion about the resource officers and our mental health team. And given the strong response from our community, we have put a hold on that decision until we gather more input. The process is likely going to begin with a survey to all families just to get a better understanding of people's needs and of people's concerns. And that will be followed by some community meetings where we can continue those discussions. We want to do this survey first so that we can kind of pull out the themes that that people want to talk about, so we can design those meetings to be as meaningful as possible. And then we'll likely bring together some focus groups so that all people have an environment where they feel safe to share their true thoughts and feelings. And then once we have this input, we'll decide how to best meet the needs of students and families, and we'll bring a recommendation to the board for consideration at a future meeting when that process has been completed. One last thing I wanted to bring up was the legislative session. I saw that the House has adjourned. The Senate was still going last I heard. So what we know is that they're not going to finish today. That means they'll have a special session in June sometime. That puts a lot of pressure on us because we, as was mentioned earlier, we're still waiting to hear on summer school funding and how that's going to be rolling out, and summer school starts in like 2 weeks, which makes it a challenge. But we know that our students have needs. We know that there will be funding available, so we are doing our best to estimate what we think is likely to be coming out. Also, budgetary decisions for the biennium, policy considerations, other special measures having to do with COVID, those are all in bills that we have been watching closely. We'll continue to watch those closely and share that information as soon as we get it. And if there are opportunities that we feel that would be good for you to become involved, we'll let you know that too. I know MSBA sends out sometimes legislative updates and action alerts. And so there are a lot of policy changes that are being considered on a funding year that are concerning as well. But we will be ready to react and respond quickly when we get those in June. And that's it.
Thank you. Board member around the table, Vice Chair Lokensgaard.
I have nothing.
Member Stewie?
Nothing.
I have nothing. Treasurer Carlson?
Yeah, I have two things. I've been on, speaking of MSBA and the legislative session, they have a Friday morning chat that they do, and that's been really informative up until 2 weeks ago when they finally named a conference committee. Then things kind of stalled out, and I noticed that the conference committee was trying to meet this afternoon after the House adjourned, so we'll who knows where this will all end, but there's so many things on the table to even speculate what's going to get taken out and what's going to stay is, you know, in the end, I think it'll come down to the money, and I hope that they will, I think a lot of things that the Democrats want will be taken away, and vice versa, just because they'll go, well, let's actually help the school districts, give them the money, and then move forward. And then just to Board Member Stewie and Board Member Soderlund, I unfortunately will not be at graduation, and I just want to let you know that it is my favorite day of the year, being a board member. And I'll never forget my first time, and I went, and I was just like, why do we have to go to graduate? What do we do? And Mark Carlsrud wouldn't tell me what was going on really, and he just said, just trust me, it'll be your favorite day of the year being a board member. So enjoy it. It's really cool and moving, and it makes what we do really hit home. So,
cool. Thank you. Member Soderlund?
Yeah, just one comment on the SRO position. Having gotten on the board in January 2020 and then immediately going into COVID and whatnot, and now this, my understanding is we did hire a second SRO. That was decided before I got on the board. I was not privy to the discussions. I have no knowledge of, at this point, of why that was done. I assume there was a reason that we had two. That being said, in addition to Superintendent Gronseth's decision to have a community survey, I think that's great. Focus groups are great. I would like for my own self to have a school safety survey. I mean, not necessarily taking opinions, but having somebody go in and look and say, are we safe? Are we doing the right thing here? And are we keeping our children safe? Because at the end of the day, that to me is the most important thing we're doing here. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Dixon.
Nothing.
Excellent. Well, thank all of you. Upcoming meetings of the school board, Friday, May 28th, 8 p.m. on the St. Peter High School campus. It is that graduation. Instructional Program Committee will meet Friday, June 11th at 8 a.m. in the district office. And the next regular board meeting will be Monday, June 21st. And that will be here in the governor's room of the St. Peter Community Center.
I think actually we had a meeting added during this meeting, right?
We did.
A finance committee, was it?
Finance committee meeting for June 11th at 9 a.m.
Right.
In the
I was so
district
confused.
office. Thank you. With that, I would, as I'm sure we would all, entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.